The following video is intended for mature audiences. It contains horror elements, adult themes, and language that might not be suitable for younger viewers. The last trick-or-treater. Officer Melanie Reeves let out a deep breath, flavored by the last sip of her black coffee. She glanced at the digital clock on her patrol car's dashboard. The neon green digit stood out in the night. 2 minutes to midnight. The Halloween revelry had quieted down, leaving Millbrook streets calm and silent, with a faint scent of wet leaves and charred pumpkins hanging in the air. The radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. All units. We have a report of a lone child trick-or-treating on Elm Street. Possible runaway or neglected child. Any officers nearby, please respond. Melanie frowned, the worry lines etched across her forehead. A kid out this late? She pressed the mic button and responded. Dispatch, Unit 17 here. I'm 2 blocks away from Elm Street. I'll check it out. Copy that, Unit 17. Came back through the static-filled response. Be careful. As she turned onto Elm Street, Melanie dimmed her headlights to avoid scaring anyone who might be around. Their light reduced to a soft glow, barely illuminating the road ahead. Dark houses stood like silent sentinels, their jack-o'-lanterns casting weak light onto worn-out porches swaying under the autumn wind. Then she spotted it, a small figure draped in white, a classic ghost costume moving along the sidewalk with a rhythmic rustle against concrete. Melanie pulled up next to the figure and rolled down her window. Hello there, she called softly into the cold night air, her words visible as faint clouds against the dark sky. It's pretty late for trick-or-treating. Are you lost? The figure stopped abruptly and turned slowly toward Melanie. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked into eye holes revealing not innocent eyes, but an abyss of darkness that seemed to absorb all light. I'm not lost, came a voice from beneath the sheet. I'm hungry. Melanie's hand shot toward her holster, but it was too late. The sheet expanded outward, engulfing her patrol car in a ghostly shroud. She screamed in terror as icy tendrils wrapped her, drawing her into an unimaginable darkness. When the morning arrived, worried neighbors found Melanie's cruiser abandoned on Elm Street, its engine still running. The dashboard clock was stuck at midnight. On the back seat lay a child-sized ghost costume neatly folded, still cold to the touch. Melanie was nowhere to be found, trapped in a supernatural world where Halloween never ended and hunger was unending. And next year, when the boundary between worlds thinned again, she would roam the quiet streets with an unquenchable thirst for souls. Always beware of the last trick-or-treater. The pumpkin patch. Eric's boots dug into the wet ground, making a squelching sound with each step. The chilly October wind reddened his cheeks as he surveyed the pumpkin patch. The field was strewn with large orange gourds tangled in twisted vines. He checked his watch. It was 6:30 and the sun had set, leaving a sky filled with deep colors. A shiver ran through him, not entirely from the cold. Always late, he muttered, picking up his shears. Halloween was only hours away, and he always had latecomers looking for last-minute pumpkins. A twig snapped behind him, and the adrenaline surged through his veins. His heart pounded as he turned around. He saw nothing but shadows and swaying cornstalks. He laughed nervously. As Eric bent to check a particularly round pumpkin, a whisper carried on the wind, making him stop in his tracks. Join us! Eric recoiled instinctively, nearly tripping over a vine. Who's there? He asked the darkness, never getting a reply. His hand flew to his flashlight and he turned it on with shaking fingers. The beam revealed nothing unusual, just pumpkins with carved faces glaring back at him under its light. Wait, carved faces? Fear trickled down Eric's spine. These pumpkins were supposed to be uncarved. Yet as he moved the flashlight across the field, numerous jack-o'-lanterns stared back at him, their eyes glowing unnaturally, their mouths twisted into evil smiles. Join us, Eric. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere in the patch. Terror welled inside him as Eric turned around frantically. The pumpkins came alive, their expressions changing right before his eyes. Eric tried to run but found himself stuck in place as the vines wrapped around his ankles like snakes digging their thorns into his skin. "No!" he screamed, struggling against the vines in vain. He was being pulled toward a pumpkin with a wide mouth filled with sharp teeth. His scream echoed as he was pulled closer to the open mouth. The pumpkin's skin peeled back, revealing a horrifying sight of squirming shapes inside it. "Please," he begged through tears, "help me." No one came, and his pleas were lost in the wind. As Eric was dragged into the pumpkin's jaws, the last thing he saw was his own terrified reflection in its eyes. The pumpkin shut with a wet squish, leaving an unsettling stillness behind. Then another jack-o'-lantern appeared, bearing Eric's terrified expression on its carved face, waiting along with the others for the next unsuspecting victim to stumble upon this cursed patch. After all, the harvest had only just begun. Masks of desire. Mira's hands moved over the rough hide, her needle catching the flickering candlelight. Her workspace was filled with masks, each one unique in its expression, from joy to sorrow. With Halloween nearing, business was booming. A knock interrupted her work and she looked up, annoyed. "Come in," she said, setting aside her current project. The door opened slowly and a tall figure appeared. "Are you the mask maker?" he asked in a gravelly voice. Mira nodded, studying him carefully. "What can I do for you?" The man stepped into the light, and Mira gasped. His face was completely smooth without any features. "I need a face," he croaked. Mira's heart pounded. She'd made masks for all sorts of people, but this request was something else entirely. I'm not sure I can help," she admitted. The man clenched his fists at his sides. "You must. Your work is famous. Your masks don't just hide, they change." Warily, Mira pointed toward her collection of masks on display along one wall. "Maybe one of these would suit you." "No." The rejection echoed through the room. "I need something real. Something alive." His words sent a shiver down Mira's spine. This request was dangerous. "Please," he begged, reaching out to her. "I'll pay whatever it takes." Mira hesitated. A part of her wanted to refuse, but another part wondered if she could actually do it. Could she make a living mask? "Fine," she finally agreed. "But you have to wear whatever mask I make for you. No exceptions." The man nodded. All night long, Mira worked on the mask using every bit of skill and magic she possessed. She added strands of hair into the leather, chanting ancient spells, and mixed her blood with the paint. As the sun rose, she held up the finished mask, an incredibly detailed replica of a human face. The man trembled with excitement. "Is it done?" "Yes," Mira replied. "But remember your promise." She carefully placed the mask onto his featureless face and watched as it melded into his skin, becoming indistinguishable from the flesh and bone. A scream filled the room, a mix of pain and pleasure. Mira watched as eyes, a nose, and lips formed on his face. Once it was over, a good-looking young man stood before her in awe of his new face. "It's perfect," he whispered in wonderment. "I'm complete." Mira gave him a sad smile. "I'm glad you're happy, but remember, this mask can never be removed." He looked confused at her words. "What do you mean?" "This is my face now." "No," Mira corrected him gently. "It's still a mask, my work, and it will always listen to me." With a snap of her fingers, his new face began to melt away. Terror widened his eyes as he desperately attempted to stop the process. "Stop!" he cried out. "Change it back!" But there was no going back. His newly formed features disappeared, leaving angry scars in their place. "The price," Mira whispered, "has been paid." She ignored the stranger as he ran off screaming into the morning light. Picking up another piece of leather, she got back to work. Halloween was coming soon. There would be more customers, more faces to make, more debts to collect. Haunted Hayride. The tractor's engine rumbled, its low hum echoing across the cool fall air. Jack gripped the rough steering wheel, his gaze flicking between the road ahead and the mirror reflecting a group of college students seated in a hay-filled trailer attached to his vehicle. The combination of Halloween thrill and Crescent Moon Farm's notorious scare factor always attracted eager visitors. "Ready for some real scares?" Jack called over his shoulder. Excited cheers filled the air, their anticipation palpable. Jack grinned as he guided the tractor into a cornfield maze. Tall cornstalks stood like silent guards around them, their leaves rustling under the watchful eye of a full moon that cast eerie shadows on everything it touched. Suddenly, a scream cut through the night. A chuckle escaped from Jack. This was part of the act he helped set up himself. More screams followed as actors disguised as monsters popped out from within the maze, causing nervous laughter among the audience. But halfway through the chilling ride, something shifted. The laughter turned anxious, and fear seemed to permeate every sound behind him. Confused, Jack checked his rearview mirror, attempting to figure out what was happening. "Stop, you're hurting him." A girl's voice rose above everything. Fear swept over Jack. This wasn't part of the plan. He hit the brakes hard and jumped down from his seat, running toward his frightened passengers. "What happened?" The group's terrified stares focused on a figure standing ominously over someone on the ground. "Hey!" yelled Jack. "Back off!" But when it turned around, he found himself face to face with an actual monster, twisted limbs ending in sharp claws, and a face that seemed to shift under the moonlight. "Fresh meat," the monster growled before lunging at him with surprising speed. Its sharp claws tore open Jack's chest. Jack collapsed to the ground. The students scattered, disappearing into the maze while more monstrous figures emerged from the shadows. As Jack lay bleeding on the ground, he wondered how long these creatures had been hiding in his fields. How many missing persons reports had he dismissed as pranks or runaways? Suddenly, a roar of engines broke through the chaos and a group of ATVs stormed onto the scene. Spotlights illuminated men and women dressed in tactical gear and armed with strange glowing weapons. "Secure this place," someone ordered. "Find their lair." As his vision began to blur, Jack's last thought was filled with regret. Crescent Moon Farm wasn't just home to a haunted hayride gone wrong. It was a hunting ground where they'd all unknowingly played bait. Days later, Crescent Moon Farm was deserted. Yellow police tape and warning signs about a supposed gas leak-induced mass hallucination marked every entrance. But locals claimed to hear strange howls from the cornfields on quiet nights, suggesting that something still lurked beneath the earth, waiting for the next harvest. The costume party. Vivian straightened her mask, catching her reflection in the old mirror. Her face was framed by peacock feathers, their colors vibrant and captivating. She felt a surge of pride. She would be the star of this Halloween party. A mysterious invitation had arrived, a black envelope sealed with red wax, hinting at a masquerade party at Garling Manor. Vivian couldn't resist such an intriguing offer. Her taxi approached the grand Victorian mansion, and Vivian gasped at its imposing sight. Each window glowed with warm candlelight while strange music filled the air. Masked guests in elaborate costumes milled about the grounds, their laughter tinged with excitement. "Some party," said the driver, looking anxious. Vivian tipped him generously and replied cheerfully, "Indeed, happy Halloween." She walked up to Garling Manor, enjoying the attention her costume garnered. A tall butler greeted her at the entrance, his mask marked only by a single painted tear. "Welcome," he said solemnly as he bowed low. "Please join our festivities." Inside was a hive of activity. Vivian made her way through the crowd of guests, dressed in elaborate costumes. She passed by a skeleton gracefully twirling with a woman whose body appeared to be engulfed in flames, and a group of revelers wearing animal masks and letting out wild, beast-like laughter. A waiter handed Vivian a glass of deep red wine that warmed her up and loosened her inhibitions. The music pulsed stronger, the sights and sounds enveloping her. Vivian lost track of time as she danced until exhaustion overtook her, flirted with anonymous partygoers, and sipped on glass after glass of wine. But once the clock struck midnight, everything shifted. The music stopped and Vivian blinked against the abrupt silence filling the room. "Dear guests, announced a voice from above. A figure wearing a horned mask stood on an overhead balcony, arms spread wide. The time for our grand unmasking has come. Excitement filled the air as masks began to fall, but Vivian's anticipation quickly turned into fear. The man beside her was a real skeleton, his bones rattling as he grinned at her. The woman made of fire exploded into flames, her body continuously reshaping itself. The group in animal masks transformed into grotesque creatures. Vivian attempted to remove her mask, but it wouldn't budge. "What's wrong?" asked the horned figure now next to her. His mask vanished, revealing a strangely attractive face. "Isn't this what you wanted? To stand out?" He gestured toward a mirror where Vivian saw herself changed. Feathers grew from her skin, and her eyes reflected bird-like qualities. "Welcome home," he whispered ominously. As she lost consciousness, Vivian realized that this wasn't just a costume party, but a sinister initiation ceremony for new members. In the following days, missing persons reports piled up on detectives' desks, featuring Vivian's smiling face among them. Another Halloween mystery. Yet, somewhere hidden, a new creature had been born. Part woman, part peacock, entirely predator. And when next Halloween came around, she'd be the one sending out the invitations. After all, her new family was always hunting for fresh blood. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Thank you for watching.